Hello friends, I am Arpit and I am here with today's analysis. Today is 26th of July and we are going to deal with two very important topics which are in news. First is AI and its impact on the environment. Well, this technology AI has been the buzzword for 21st century. Specifically talking about its impact on the environment, AI surprisingly has positive as well as negative impacts on the environment at the same time. Why positive? Because with AI, we can develop models which can help us predict the emissions and accordingly, we can take actions to reduce them. How can it be negative? AI requires a lot of data centers from where the machines they mine or they sift the information and present to us. So these data centers require a huge amount of electricity. They generate a lot of heat, which requires a lot of air conditioning and water also to cool them down. So these are negative impacts on the environment. So isn't it interesting that, on a same parameter, AI is having positive as well as negative impacts? That we need to understand. Second is Supreme Court on GM mustard. GM here stands for genetically modified. If it would have been approved, genetically modified mustard would have been the second genetically modified crop in India to be cultivated and the first edible crop in India to be cultivated. The first genetically modified crop in India was BT cotton, that is genetically modified cotton. Supreme Court has delivered a split verdict over here for allowing the environmental assessment of this GM mustard, which has been pending from a long time. So let's look into this issue and we'll be able to understand it in a much better way. So AI and its impact on the environment. So by now you have understood that by AI has positive as well as negative impacts on the environment. But what is AI? First of all, a brief about that. Artificial intelligence. You search on the internet, whatever you want to search, whatever doubts you have. You go to Google, you search, Google gives you a list of websites, and on that list of websites, you click and you get the information. Well, AI makes your job easier. What AI does is AI gives you the exact information in a much better readable way on the screen, and then it is followed by multiple links from where it has picked up. So what AI does is it picks up information from those websites, curates it, presents it, and this all is done within seconds. There are multiple other usages or applications of AI. Like for example, chatbots. Many of you might be doing online shoppings. You go to, Flipkart or Amazon and you want to consult with them if you have any concerns or if you have any doubts. So you go to the chatbot, you enter your input, you immediately receive a response. Then you enter, you receive a response. A human is not sitting there and responding you. It is the machine which is responding you, understanding what your input is. So that understanding gives an element of intelligence to that machine. Obviously, that intelligence cannot be matched with human intelligence, and that is why that is referred to as artificial intelligence. But that machine, it works with its huge database behind to bring that response to you. That huge database needs to be maintained. And for maintaining those database, data centers are there. And data centers, they consume a lot of electricity. In fact, the capacity of data centers is not on the basis of the amount of information it can hold, but it is on the basis of amount of electricity which it is consuming. The data centers, a lot of heat is generated over there, so cooling is also required, air conditioning is also required. At times, water is also required to cool it down because big air conditioning plants they require water. So this is how AI is creating negative impacts on the environment because it is generating excess demand for electricity and water, which are obviously leading to more or are limited in resource, limited in quantity like water. Or if more electricity demand is there, so more emissions will be there to generate electricity. Specifically in a country like India, where around 58 to 60% of its electricity is generated by burning coal, and the usage of AI is increasing and increasing only. So this is something which is concerned. So let us look at it. In its annual environment report released earlier this month, Google reported a 13% increase in its emissions footprint in 2023. Emissions footprint is how much emissions Google has done versus how much emissions Google has taken in. So emission footprint of Google means what amount of emissions Google is doing in a nutshell to be understood, and there was 13% increase in the emission footprint of Google. Why? Because Google is also dependent upon AI. The rise was attributed mainly to the increased electricity consumption in its data centers and supply chains. Google said its data centers consumed 17% more electricity in 2023 and added that this trend was expected to continue in the coming years because of greater deployment and usage of its artificial intelligence tools. So, this is the reason. Now, some hard facts. AI, which is expected to enable transformative changes the way humans live, and these transformative changes can be seen across several domains, including attempts to find solutions to climate change. Here, climate is being impacted with the usage of AI or with the increased usage of AI. Studies have shown that a simple AI query, like the ones posted on OpenAI's chatbot ChatGPT, would be using between 10 and 33 times more energy than a regular Google search. Regular Google search is not AI, but there is an AI feature added by Google, that is Gemini. If you want to enable it, you can enable it. But if you don't enable it, generally you search it, you get the list of website, and from there you have to search and mine the information, take out the information. Their emissions are not so high as compared to the emissions in similar kind of search in ChatGPT, because that ChatGPT will sift information, mine it, present it to you in a much, I would say, simplified way. So that is what there it is. Image based AI searches could be using even more energy. So this is happening and the usage of AI is increasing day by day. Why emissions are higher? AI models typically work more than a simple Google search, even when the same questions is addressed to both. They sift through much more data while processing and formulating appropriate responses. More work means greater number of electrical signals are required when the computer is processing, storing and retrieving data. More work also generates and releases more heat, which then requires more powerful air conditioning or other forms of cooling the data centers. So, other forms of cooling the data centers, you require water. So, this is why emissions are higher in AI as compared to a normal Google search. Do we need to worry? Yes, obviously we need to worry because the usage of AI or the adoption of AI has been increasing day by day. The AI tools are deployed more widely now. Their impact on energy consumption worldwide is expected to rise sharply. Already, data centers account for between 1% and 1.3% of the global electricity demand. And this could double, become between 1.5 and 3% by 2026, according to the recent projections of the IEA, that is International Energy Agency. By contrast, despite the large number of electric vehicles on the road, this data or this fact is interesting. Electric vehicles on the road, they require electricity for getting charged. Their share in the global electricity consumption was just about 0.5%, and see, the share of electricity consumed by the data centers is 1 and 1.3%. At the level of countries, the electricity consumption of data centers as a share of national demand has also risen. And in certain countries, it has gone in double digits, like Ireland, 18%. Government is giving tax benefits to those people who are opening data centers over there. So more and more people are opening data centers over there. For USA, having the largest number of data centers, 1.3 to 4.5%. This is there. Data for India is not known as of now. This data is with respect to the electricity consumption of data centers as a share of national demand of that particular country. But yes, a lot of data centers are coming up in India as well, and you may see in the future these data centers there and this data also coming ki bhai, of the national demand, this much percent is required by the data centers. Alternate viewpoint about AI and environment conservation. Alternate viewpoint is AI can benefit to conserve the environment. Other estimates suggest that large scale deployment of AI could help in significant reductions of emissions globally. A recent study by the Boston Consulting Group (BCG) found that application of AI to incorporate and industrial practices could result in 5 to 10% reduction in global emissions by 2030. while generating a value worth $1.3 trillion to $2.6 trillion through additional revenue or cost savings. Emission reductions can happen if AI is deployed to monitor and predict emissions in existing processes and optimize these to eliminate wastage or inefficiencies. So, this is the alternate viewpoint where AI is benefiting or can benefit the environment. Now, next is Supreme Court on GM mustard. GM here stands for genetically modified. Now, the genes are modified of the agricultural crops. Objective to increase productivity or to make the nutrition value high. Multiple can be the objectives. Positive, obviously, we are fiddling with the genes, so definitely there should be some good reason with us to fiddle with those genes. Are GM crops common all across the world? Yes, they are common all across the world. But in India, there is only one genetically modified crop which is available for commercial cultivation, and that genetically modified crop is cotton. Cotton, it is BT cotton. BT stands for Bacillus thuringiensis. Now, what happened with respect to cotton? Why we genetically modified cotton? There is a story behind that. Cotton crops were cultivated by the farmers in the Deccan area where the black soil is. And there was one pest, pink bollworm, which used to come and consume the cotton crop. As a result, productivity was not there and farmers lived their lives in distress. Then the scientists found this way of tackling that pest. What the scientists did, the scientists took a microbe from the soil in which the cotton is grown. That microbe was called as Bacillus thuringiensis. The scientists took the gene of that microbe, because genes are there in microbes also, inserted that gene in the seed of cotton. Inside the seed of the cotton, there will be genes of the cotton. That gene of the cotton was modified by inserting that foreign gene, or I would say outside gene of that particular bacteria or that particular, I would say, microbe. Then that seed which was prepared after modifying the genes of that seed was called as GM cotton or BT cotton. Now, when the crop of BT cotton grew, pink bollworms came, consumed it. That created an acidic medium in the stomach of the pink bollworm, and the pink bollworm died. Slowly and gradually, the pink bollworms evolved and understood ki bhai, we don't have to eat this, we don't have to consume this. As a result, the pest attacks on the cotton crop reduced. And ultimately, as a result, the productivity of cotton crop increased. This was the benefit of genetic modification in cotton. Here, in case of mustard, again, the objective is to increase the productivity of mustard. So here, two alien genes are being brought in, and these alien genes will lead to increased productivity. One alien gene will, nullify the male sterility in the mustard plant, and the other will aid in then producing more and more mustard seeds. But for any genetically modified crop to be, available for commercial cultivation, like BT cotton is, it has to go through a process. The organization or the scientists who have developed that genetically modified seed first have to approach GEAC, that is Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. If GEAC gives them permission for environmental runs or environmental assessments, then it will do environmental assessment of those genetically modified seeds, like what is the impact of this genetically modified seeds on the local environment where it will grow. Because if it has negative impact on the local environment, which it can definitely have, permission will not be granted. So once that environment assessment is done, then that, you know seed goes for field trials. Once the field trials are also successful, then permission is granted for commercial cultivation. And GEAC is not the top authority which is granting permission for commercial cultivation. It is Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change which is doing it. So we need to understand this. Now, what happened in case of GM mustard? GM Mustard was given the permission to do environment assessments, but an environmentalist and an organization challenged this permission given to GM Mustard for environmental assessment in the Supreme Court. Now the Supreme Court has, given a split verdict. There was a two-judge bench which was formed, and that two-judge bench gave a split verdict, highlighting कि भाई one judge is allowing environmental assessment, the second one is not allowing environmental assessment. That is the case with GM Mustard. A two-judge bench of Supreme Court on Tuesday delivered a split verdict on whether to allow environmental release. Environmental release is environmental assessment only of genetically modified mustard. What is environmental release? It is a method of assessing the impact of GM crops on the environment. These impacts can be positive, can reduce the need for herbicide and pesticides, as well as negative, can be invasive to the native species. So both of these can be there. So that has to be assessed. Now this particular case, so there were two judges, Justices B.V. Nagaratha and Mr. Sanjay Karol. They disagreed on whether the approval given by GEAC, that is Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee, the body that is responsible for approving proposals related to genetically engineered organisms, to proceed with field trials following the environmental release was done properly. So this permission granted by GEAC to go for environmental assessments and then field trials was given properly or not. This was the main thing. This was GEAC's second major push to introduce GM mustard as the first GM crop that is meant for human consumption. First GM crop that is meant for human consumption. Cotton is actually the first GM crop, but we cannot consume that. So it is like this. Bacillus thuringiensis cotton or BT cotton is the only GM crop that has been approved for cultivation in India so far. Now what happens now after the split verdict? This case will go to the CJI. CJI will form a larger bench, maybe a three-judge bench for this, and then hearings will be done. However, both the judges directed the Union of India to evolve a national policy with regards to GM crops. That what should be the procedure, when the crop should be going for environmental assessment or environment release, when should they be going for field trials. That proper procedure should be there in that policy. So that was told by the judges to the government. Now, the story of GM mustard. How has been the story of GM mustard? So, it has been there since 2015. September 15, 2015, the Center for Genetic Manipulation of Crop Plants, CGMCP, at the Delhi University sought GEAC's approval for the environmental release of genetically engineered hybrid mustard called DMH11, commonly known as GM mustard. Dhara mustard hybrid is the full form of DMH. Along with the proposal, the CGMCP submitted a biosafety dossier and the GEAC created a subcommittee to examine its contents. Following some revisions, the subcommittee considered the dossier and submitted its report. Next year, September 2016, the report was published and the comments were invited from the experts. On May 11, 2017, now as from 2015 we have entered into 2017, the GEAC recommended the environmental release of GM mustard. So in 2017, environmental release of GM mustard was, agreed or approved by GEAC. If approved, this would allow field tests to be conducted to examine the effects of cultivating the crop. So if that would have been successful environmental release, then that crop would go for field trials. However, after receiving several representations, the Ministry of Environment sent the proposal back to GEAC for re-examination in March 2018. The GEAC gave that environmental release to this GM mustard, but that goes to the ministry, and ultimate authority is the ministry. Ministry held it. The GEAC then directed the CGMCP to examine the effect of GM mustard on honeybees and soil microbial diversity, but these tests were deferred through 2020-21. In May 2022, gene scientist Professor Deepak Pental, on behalf of CGMCP, wrote to the Minister of Environment directly. So, this body, CGMCP, is there, which has made this GM mustard. Then there is GEAC. Then there is Ministry of Environment forest and climate change. The ultimate authority is this. So environmental clearance given, but this was rejected by MOEFCC. Then Professor Pentel wrote directly to the Minister of MOEFCC, urging him to accept the recommendation for the environmental release of GM mustard. The GEAC sought comments from various government departments which recommended releasing GM mustard. The proposal was submitted in October 18, 2022. It was accepted by the Centre on October 25, and recommendations and conditions regarding the field tests were sent to Professor Pentel. Means environmental assessments were allowed, and then some rules and regulations were also sent. By field trials, you have to do it this way. So this was a victory for the gene scientists, but some people, they filed the case in Supreme Court. That was the roadblock. Environmentalist Aruna Rodriguez and the research and advocacy organization Gene Campaign challenged the decision to approve the environmental release of GM mustard before the Supreme Court. Now, as a result of this challenge, as a result of this petition filed by these people in the Supreme Court against GM mustard, this two-judge bench was formed and the judgment has been given. The Supreme Court on this case, in their split decision, the judges disagreed on two key aspects. First, whether the GEAC's decision-making process was legal, and second, whether it violated the precautionary principle for scientific innovations. The precautionary principle, a standard test in environmental litigation, is recognized as a facet of right to a clean environment, a subset of Article 21, fundamental rights to life. So, these two were the points. But yes, overall advantages of GM crops, if we see, to increase productivity and prevent crop loss, which happened in the case of BT cotton. Second, food security can be ensured because productivity will be increased, so food security will be ensured. But in case of India, no such edible, agricultural crop is genetically modified. So we cannot say this in case of India, but yes, overall it is there. Enhanced nutritional quality of the food crops. Yes, this can be done by genetic modification. Maintain a soil fertility. Yes, because BT cotton now does not require the application of pesticides. The application of pesticides is not there. The soil fertility or soil health will be good. Challenges with GM crops. First, biosafety of human and animal health. So that is a big challenge. This biosafety of human and animal health, that has to be looked into. Environmental concerns are there. That is why that environment clearances or environmental assessments have to be done. Economic concerns are there. See, we are saying that yields of GM crops will be more, but they have not been to such extent that was, anticipated. And, many farmers all across the world have adopted this and they are not receiving the desired results. Ecological concerns, obviously, it can damage the local ecology. It can become an alien species, which is, acting like, damaging the other local species over there. Those are called as alien invasive species. So that kind of ecological disasters can be done by it. Now, what should be the way forward? Awareness and information should be there more and more with respect to these GM crops. That is very much important. Government roadmap should be there, government policies should be there, and this has also been testified by these two judges in this particular case. Capacity building for research and development more and more should be there for these kind of genetically modified crops, because the future of food security can be over here. And robust clinical trials should be there. Time taking, diverse, I would say, environments, diverse, I would say, conditions, these trials should be conducted, and we should have then the data about those genetically modified crops. That should be the actual way forward. We cannot run away from genetically modified crops because, the population is increasing, the pressure on resources is increasing, and that has to be tackled in a diligent manner. Coming to the MCQs. Which is India's largest data center? Yotta Data Services, Tata Communications Limited, Control S Data Centers Limited, none of the above. I have not told you this, but yes, this we've discussed earlier also, and just try your hand on this. How is AI leading to a negative impact on the environment? First, the data centers are consuming more electricity for sifting data. Second, the data centers are using more electricity. Third, the data centers require more water. Which of these options are correct? Third, consider the following statements and mark the correct one. First, we can reduce emissions with applications of AI. Second, increased usage of AI is leading to increased emissions. Which of these statements are correct? Fourth, which of the following bodies is the ultimate authority for allowing commercial cultivation of GM crops in India? Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, the Cabinet, or none of the above? And last question, consider the following statements and mark the correct one. Field trials of a GM crop can only happen after successful environmental release. In India, only one GM crop is permitted for commercial cultivation till now. Which of these statements are true? Now, the MCQs of yesterday. Consider the following statements and mark the correct one. Assertion statement is the government announced in budget 2024-25 about developing a climate finance taxonomy. Yes, our topic was this. Reason to enhance the availability of capital for climate adaptation and mitigation. The reason is also correct, that one of the reasons why this taxonomy or this category is being created is this. So the answer is A. Both A and R are correct, and R is the correct explanation of A. Second, in which of the following climate taxonomy can be significant? In assessing greenwashing by the companies? Yes, we told you or we discussed what was greenwashing yesterday. In increasing our climate adaptation and mitigation capabilities? Yes. In increasing the fund inflow for green projects? Yes. All of the above is the correct answer for this particular question. Which among the below mentioned countries does not have climate taxonomy? And there was a list of countries which I gave you, in which USA was not part of it. So does not have it. So USA does not have it. So USA is the correct answer for this question. Consider the following statements with respect to India's climate goals and mark how many of them are correct. First is India will reach net zero by 2070. This is correct. In the INDCs 2.2, this was the last INDCs which we covered. Now, second and third was tricky. India will meet 50% of its energy requirements from non-fossils by 2030. It is not from non-fossils, it is from renewable energy. And India will increase its non-fossil capacity to 500 gigawatts by 2030. So this statement is also wrong, this statement is also wrong. I interchange these things. Okay. So non-fossils has to be here, renewables have to be here. So only one statement is correct, that is A. And last is consider the following statements and mark the correct one. Civil servants of the center are not allowed to join any political organization. Yes, since 1947 there has been rules. They are not allowed to join any political organization. To interpret whether an organization is political or not, the government's decision is final. Yes, this is also true. So both the statements over here are right. So C is going to be the correct answer for this particular question. With this, we've come to an end of today's session. I will be seeing you tomorrow now with more such informative news pieces. Till then, you guys very well know what to do. I'm not repeating it today. Namaste. Jai Hind.